Hello and welcome back to Up the Villa. This is your tactical debrief for Aston Villa 0, Newcastle United 0. And I imagine some of you are thinking, what are you going to look at? What are you going to look at on a 0-0? Well, let me tell you, there's a lot to look at. And there's a reality of what we saw yesterday against Newcastle United. So I'm going to literally go through everything, tactical pad. We're going to go through passing networks, heat maps, average positions. I've got a new metric toy to take a look at, and wait until you see something about Bezo. Stick around for Bezo Watch, right? So we're going to go in depth analysis. We're going to take a look at everything. So we're going to start then with the tactical element. And what I will say is this analysis is it's in depth and it's good and it needs to be. And the other element to it as well is, yes, it's game week 1, but game week 1 is just as important as game week 10, game week 20, game week 28, game week 37, game week 38. We lost out last season on Champions League football by 1 point or better goals. So it's important that we do analyse and we do critique and we do strive for more, because this is just the nature of where we are right now. We're not in a nature anymore of like just dusting. Oh, it's only game, it's only we'll get better. We'll grow into things. No, we're not there anymore. So let's go in depth, and you can all make your own opinions on everything that I'm discussing. So I'm here to paint a picture of what happened against Newcastle, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you feel after watching what I'm about to show you. So here we've got Aston Villa v Newcastle with how both teams lined up, and the general consensus of how we played on a tactical pad was we got Tyrone Mings-Desvikonsa, Matty Cash, Kamara and Onana. Now, what you generally find with this system under Emery in the past is that Tielemans would drop, McGinn would go and support Watkins, your width then would come from Matty Cash, and we get this 3 at the back vibe, and Daniel go forward. And that's the general makeup of what areas we would try and get into. Now, against Newcastle, our width was severely nullified. Now, that could be down to Newcastle, and that could be down to them pushing us further back, which I do think had an element to it with Digne and Alanga, and maybe Barnes, Livramento with Cash. But Kamara and Onana were pretty central for Villa yesterday. They were pretty together on the same line. What I've spoke about, Kamara's able to jump and press and be more and not have to be in around this position. And we found Tielemans off Watkins and McGinn in this inside channel pocket here, not occupying out and out width, more or less inside through here. Then we saw Morgan Rogers in an inside position as well. So again, what we can start to see is that Villa are very, very narrow. We are so narrow that there is a severe lack of width. Now, when you look at Newcastle's threat, Newcastle's back 4 were pretty expected. They got up and down. They had Tonali sat at a base, and they've got Joelinton and Gomes, who the 3 of those together did boss it. Tonali bossed it. But we did compete with that midfield. I'm not saying that we didn't compete and they completely overrode us. They didn't, because we were competitive in central midfield. It was a pretty competitive game with Onana, Kamara. They both had really good games for Aston Villa. And then where Newcastle's threat came from was out wide. So this is just something to bear in mind early on, that their threat came from out wide and Gordon dropping into that false 9. So that was the general makeup of the two teams, how we generally played. Now, if we have a look at the average positions, now this is the average positions of the game. Again, what we can see from the average positions is we can start to see where we've got slight issues. So the average positions, for anybody who's new, is that it's the average position that that player plays during the game. So you can see that if, for example, Rodgers is here, now that shows me that he spent time over here, time over here, time here, and he's averagely in and around that zone, right? So we can see from the average positions then that the threat from Newcastle is coming from Barnes, it's coming from Elanga, Trippier and Livramento are supporting and getting high. And the engaging of the Newcastle midfield to be inside our half shows that they were progressive and dominant. Now, when you start looking at Aston Villa, the one glaringly obvious aspect of us is in and around here, out wide, options through there, just a complete lack of width. And again, when we're talking about this system and we're talking about how we played yesterday, where's our width meant to come from? Yesterday, our width is meant to come from Matty Cash and Luca Dean. So that's where the width is meant to come from Aston Villa. And if we have a look at the passing networks, we can see from Villa's passing network that, again, if anybody doesn't know what a passing network is where every player has passed the ball, and then you'll sort of get your average position through it as well. The thicker lines mean that that pass is being played more, and that's the most dominant pass that we've played during the game. Now, what you want from a passing network is you want it to be expansive, you want to have triangles, and you want to have everybody with touches. You want Villa to be spanning the width of the pitch, which means that we are dominant territorially, and you want to see nice patterns with pretty much every single player. Now, if you take a look at where Villa's biggest networks were, it was Bezo to Mings, Bezo to Konsa. We've got Mings to Konsa. We've got Mings to Onana, Onana to Kamara, Kamara to Onana, etc. And then you start looking at the forward line of Aston Villa. There isn't really a network because we've got Watkins with no network with McGinn, no network with Tielemans, hardly a network with Rodgers. Rodgers, no network with Tielemans. Tielemans with no network with Rodgers. So as we're starting to paint this picture now with Villa, we're starting to look at this area was actually pretty solid for Villa in build-up. We were building okay as a team because what we're doing is, if you look, and I think this is important, if you look up until here in build-up, it looked pretty good. But then this area here is non-existent. There's no forward line. There's no partnerships. There's no cohesion. There's no togetherness. There's no width. And you're talking 4 players there out of the Villa's team. Four players are very, very isolated. And yesterday, when I'm talking about the system and the tactics and it not being great, this is what I was talking about. The network, the touches. I mean, we're going to get onto touches in a second, guys. And touches, it's eye-opening. Honestly, it's eye-opening. I cannot. Last night when I was putting this episode together, I was talking to Earl. And I was finding stuff, and I couldn't believe it. And I'd find something else, and I couldn't believe that. And I'd find something else, and I couldn't believe that. So here lies the problem. The forward line was just not good. The balance wasn't right. So the balance needs to be better. The threat needs to be better. And if we look at a Newcastle network compared to Villa's, triangles, partnerships, touches, threat. And the threat lies with the profile of player, because Elanga was okay, wasn't he? Elanga. So Elanga played okay here, but he wasn't great on quality, was he? But the one thing that he was for Newcastle is he was a threat. Harvey Barnes wasn't great, firing over at will. But the one thing that he was is he was a threat. And when you've got a threat with your system, you've got your solid base here. You've got this solid base of your midfield three. And then they've got options out here, wingers. If they get 10 dribbling opportunities against a fullback, they're probably winning 6. So if you're stretching teams, their balance was just a lot better. You can see that they've got fullbacks basically in Villa's half, defensive structure, solid midfield, and then threats all over the pitch. So from Villa, I just didn't think we got to grips with them at all, really. And I think second half we started to, once Unai had a chat, we started to be that threat, didn't we? We started to look slightly more potent and growing into the game. And we, I imagine he wanted to make his changes, but unfortunately, the red card didn't allow us to do that. If we have a look at the average positions, you can see both teams now side by side, and you can see which one's more dominant compared to the other. And for me, it boils down to cohesion and threat. You've got your width from Matty Cash, not really having a solid red zone inside the opposition half. Luca Dean, exactly the same. We've got Morgan Rogers, not too many touches in and around the 18-yard box. 2 solid performances from Kamara and Onana. We've got Mings. Well, we've got Mings and we've got Konsa. And then I want to show you Tielemans. Now, I'm looking at Tielemans' position and I'm thinking, you are the link up now. You are the link between the double pivot and McGinn and Rogers and Watkins. And then when I look at his touches, no touches in and around the 18-yard box. This is where we need Tielemans getting on the ball, like just popping it, dropping deep, playing balls through. And Watkins, I thought Watkins was okay. I mean, we compare it to, heat zones of Livramento, heat zones of Trippier. We've got Barnes. Look at his red zone. Elanga, he's got a red zone near the 18-yard box. Tonali everywhere. Gomes and Joelinton. So Heatmaps from Villa do still paint the same picture, that we weren't potent enough getting further forward inside the Newcastle key zones. So we're going to look at touches now, and we are going to analyze the game as well in a second, but we'll go with touches. And I think touches are important because, and what you'll generally find is the further up the pitch you go, the less touches you're going to get. So if you are Watkins, Isak, Haaland, you are going to get less touches. That's a fact, because everything builds up to get to you. You can come deep at times, but you're straying out of position. So the players that generally would have most touches for Villa would be the centre-backs playing out from the back, goalkeeper. It will be central midfielders. But then you still need either side of those to have decent amounts of touches, because they're inverting, being creative, etc. So let's take a look at the touches for Villa Newcastle. So we've got Sandro Tonali on 72, Trippier on 71, Shaw on 70, Livramento on 70, Burn on 67, Gomes on 58, Onana 58, Kamara 53, Bezo 52, and Digne 49. So we can see that the Newcastle players are getting a lot more touches than the Villa players. Now, this is eye-opening, This was Aston Villa's attack yesterday. So we've got McGinn on the right, we've got Rodgers on the left, Urine off the striker, and Ollie Watkins. McGinn in 19th on 34, Rodgers in 20th on 33, Tielemans in 21st on 31, and Watkins on 22, well, in 22nd place on 30. That's Villa's attack. And they're in 19th to 22nd place, hardly touching the ball. The two players in here that should be touching the ball a lot more are Rodgers on the left and McGinn out wide on the right. You know, Rodgers should have got around a 50 odd yesterday. McGinn, pretty much the same. So again, that highlights when I've showed you the tactical pad of how we've played, the passing network. You can't have your four players up top not touching the ball hardly. You know, it's that element of us has got to be better there. There's got to be more cohesion together. Now, there's some really interesting stats here now, and we've got top speed, and this is new to the Premier League. They've only released it this season. So you can see who were the fastest players on the pitch, and there's not much to read from this fastest speed, but it is because you get to find out who's the fastest. So basically, for Villa, it was Tyrone Mings on 20.9 miles an hour. Right now, why is that important? Because Mings last season looked like he couldn't run at full pelt. But this is so pleasing to see Mings being able to run and trust his body at full speed. Then we've got Konsa, Watkins, Gordon, Alanga, who are pretty quick. Next up, we've got distance covered. Now, this is a metric that it's very difficult to read into off one game. So I think what this metric is good to do is let's go on 10-game basis and we'll see average where players are in the Premier League. So we'll compare it to Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, and we'll do that on a bit of a case study in probably like 5 and 10 games time. But I think it's good to see who covered the most distance. Yuri Tielemans covered it. Rodgers covered it. So pretty similar across the board. But again, Newcastle players at the top. But this is so interesting, guys. This is so interesting. Bezo covered 3.4 miles yesterday, and McGinn covered 5.3. I find this crazy. What's Bezo doing? Where does Bezo get his distance covered from? Is it running from the tunnel back to his starting spot? But Bezo's distance covered 3.4 miles and McGinn 5.3. I don't know, but Bezo's doing some ground there. Bezo is covering some ground. And then finally, this was sprint distances. So it shows the distances that players have sprinted. So Gordon 0.3, Langer 0.3. So I just thought it would be really interesting to show you those numbers because the Premier League haven't really done this before. So I kind of like that they're now enabling us to get to see the actual distances. So we're going to go through now some of the main talking points from the game and areas that I picked up of note that I think need mentioning. So we've got this moment, we can see it's in the 3rd minute, and we've got Luca Dean coming across to try and cut out Alanga, and he's not able to get full contact on this. The ball has come again from inside here with Tonali, and there's a lack of pressure on the ball, and the ball's played in behind. But what we actually find is that we have a little bit of a comical moment in here where we have two players wiping each other out. We've got Alanga clean through on goal, and Aston Villa are in disarray already in the 3rd minute. But I think the important thing to note is that Bezo makes a top save. And when I was analysing Bezo, I said that he's good at pushing it away from players. And he makes the save. He does push it away. And Gordon's not able to get on top of that. Again, we've got Bezo making a really good save, going through bodies. Again, pushes it away, really strong, commanding goalkeeping. And then Villa's attack was this happened twice, and I don't think I've ever really seen it from an Emery team where two players are like running into the same position, running into the same area, looking quite clumsy, and just, one of you go for it, one of you make the decision. And yeah, I just thought it was a bit strange how clumsy it looked. But, that happened twice in the game. So here I've got a real good moment from Villa, and just a moment that we didn't see enough, guys. A moment that we didn't see enough. But I think it highlights the team, and I think we can take a good snapshot of what position are we trying to get into. So we can see here that we've got 3 players across this back line through here, which is pretty good. Now, the biggest thing that I'm looking at in this image is Boubacar Kamara, because normally Kamara would be positioned probably a little bit closer and further to Matty Cash, probably be in and around that position, covering, screening, protecting, making sure that he's covered over a little bit. But what we actually saw yesterday was something that we've seen in pre-season, that these two players very close together. And this movie is very Villa as well. We play that pass past the Newcastle United midfield. Now, anyone that watched my tactical show in the week will know that the one place that you hurt Newcastle is in behind this midfield. This is the area that you do serious damage to Newcastle, turning that midfield 3 over, bypassing that midfield and driving forward. So we didn't do it enough at all. And this was probably one of the only times that we did do it. We play the pass into Tielemans. We play the pass into Rodgers. We play the pass into Watkins, and he gets his shot off. We've got width on the opposite side from McGinn, and we've got Digne through here as well. So this was a really well-worked move for Aston Villa, and we can see how it comes off. We go into Tielemans, we go into Rodgers, we go into Watkins, and he gets his shot off. Now, this is the red card incident, and Villa are in a pretty good position here. It's a pretty good move from Aston Villa. We have the ball with a nice Morgan Rodgers pinger to John McGinn, who is blindsided Livramento. He's got behind him, and it's a really good opportunity to sort of drive forward and attack quickly. We tend to slow it down slightly. Livramento gets back, he shuts out. But before this image, before I got this screen grab here, Rodgers had his hand up. Rodgers wanted the cross to come in early because, look, he's travelled from where he crossed it. So he's drove forward, try and get on the back of that, head it, or create problems. But we don't do that. Now, we've got in the box so far Watkins, Rodgers, and Tielemans. So we slow it down slightly, and we then have arriving in the box Onana, Watkins, Rodgers, and Tielemans. We're pretty set now for a good cross to go in the box. But also, we've worked it here with McGinn, and we've got Kamara, who's come across and come over as well. We've got Digne, who's occupying a space here. Now, this cross is terrible. It's a bad cross. And when we're talking about our right back being our width at times and quality having to come in, this just wasn't good enough. The cross wasn't good enough. We've got players that have committed to get into the box. And the cross lands here. Now, what you can see is that if that cross does land there, your one central midfielder is here and your second one is there. Really, we could do with one of them being there, but they're not because we're on the attack. So we move it on slightly and we end up in this position. Now, it's difficult to analyse this because we're talking fine margin decision-making here now. When I watched it back, I actually thought maybe Digne could see this ball dropping at Elanga and maybe try and jump it and go. But he doesn't. He decides to go backwards and go that way and try and think of, okay, the danger might be closer to my goal. But again, you can see that he doesn't really want to engage with Elanga. He wants to keep going this way. And one of the things of this instance here is if we take a look at this moment here, Ezri Konsa is in front of Gordon. What I would like to have seen him do here is know the threat was in behind and try and move him away, move him towards. I'm not saying like but you know where the dugout is. So the dugouts are over there. So run forward, but slightly that way to make sure you're staying in front. Or if you can get tight to him, make sure you can use your, shoulder barge him, not go into him, but just put pressure on him. So you're running with pressure on him and force him away a little bit. And then you'll probably be able to try and just recover well. But we don't. And he ends up getting, and I know he's rapid. He is rapid. He's rapid, right? But Konsa's, you can see here that Konsa's looking at the ball. And I think Konsa should have just focused really on Gordon a bit more. Focus on Gordon, but obviously know that you've got to run that way at full pelt. That's obvious because that's where the ball's going. But Gordon's now in front of him and it's all over basically. You're going to have to make a decision and your decision is to pull him back. So I think even though there's a couple of things that probably could have happened where we didn't get to that situation, but it is the Premier League and he's very, very quick. And then we've got Halt Cam here, guys. This is Halt Cam. And I just wanted to show, this was Newcastle when we were playing out from the back. And why I wanted to show you my Halt Cam is because I want to show you the press from Newcastle. And it was man for man. And I was just a little bit surprised that we didn't do that stretching tactic that we've done from before. So you can see we've got Digne, and then we've got this Newcastle player will go here, Newcastle here, Newcastle here. We've got Newcastle here, Newcastle here. He's going to press through there, or he can go there, there. So they did go man for man, and we are bunched up over here. But I'd have liked to have seen us just come across just a little bit more. That would have just, maybe if we was in and around this area, which we were last season, you'll have a little bit more space. So I just wanted to show Halt Cam how they pressed us playing out from the back. So I just wanted to highlight that, really. I thought Halt Cam's quite good, isn't it, I think? So, I mean, that's my analysis, really. And I feel like, obviously, we will be better. We can be better. We can be miles better than that. But we just need to, if we're playing a different system with different personnel, we just need to make sure we're more connected and together. That's what I would say about yesterday. We were solid up until a point, and then you get past that point, and there wasn't really much there. So I think that's probably my biggest observation. And I actually do think, reflecting, that Newcastle did play quite well. Their midfield three was good. I think they showed tenacity and a mentality without Isak, and we did well to come through it, really. So we got the point. We kept the clean sheet. Bezo was brilliant. So that's my honest thoughts, really. And I think I've highlighted quite a few interesting points for you. So if you have enjoyed it, make sure you are hitting the like button, comment your thoughts, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back with Brentford content in the week. Up the Villa.